been my privilege to become acquainted with a number of very fine professional speakers over the years. My paths have crossed with them. I'm thinking particularly of one right now that, well, she is just an excellent humorist, Jeannie Robertson. She she loves to tell the story about the time that she was speaking in some city and went to a store to get something, and on the checkout line, the clerk who was checking out her things there and looked up at her, and Jeannie's a bit on the tall side, and the lady looks up and says, "How tall are you?" And Jeannie said, "Well, I'm 6'2". 6'2"? A woman who is 6'2"? Jeannie stares at her and says, "Well, that's right. I'm only 5'14". I knew you weren't 6'2". That's the way that it went. And of course, she loved to tell that story because, well, there might be some other people who don't know the difference or who do know the similarity. How's that? That might be it. A very fine collection of humor in a book called Keep 'Em Laughin', in which Jeannie Robertson is one of the professional speakers that put these things together. Bob Henry, Joe Griffith, and Jim Blakely is another one. Or is, yes, or three of the others. There were four of them that put together the book. I just wanted to share a couple of the fun things. There's about 200 pages of them in here, so you have to see what can be done anyway, I suppose. But the little girl, 8 years old, said to her older brother, "When I go to junior high school, I'm going to take shop." And the older brother says, No, girls don't take shop." And the 8-year-old said, "Well, why not? Isn't that where you learn to buy things?" Well, I think that's well, it makes a lot of sense both ways, doesn't it? And then little boy was asked one time to define the word mother. He came up with a pretty good definition. He said, "A mother is somebody who buys you underwear when you really wanted a model airplane." That kind of gives a pretty good example of all of that. What is middle age? Well, they define it in their book here, and they say, middle age is when you know the answers but nobody asks the questions. Or, middle age is when you want to see how long the car will last instead of how fast it will go. I like that one. And middle age is when you get out of the shower and you're glad the mirror is all fogged up. No, you don't want to see yourself. Oh, my, that could certainly be a pretty good way of doing it. Oh, finally, here's another little fun thing. But finally, because see, you can go on and on and on with these things, of course, and then you're not quite sure whether you've kept everybody listening to this radio station. But I'm thinking of the one here in the category, one of the other categories in this book by these folks. They said a fellow was sitting next well, they say it to me. I don't know that it was ever this way. But anyway, I'll read it just as it's told here. A fellow sitting next to me on a plane said, "Hey, friend, I notice you're wearing your wedding ring on the wrong finger." "Yeah," I said, "I know. I married the wrong woman." Maybe that's the way to do it. Might be. Well, those are just a couple sharings from the book. Keep 'em Laughin'. And by a bunch of platform professionals, and I'm very grateful that I've known them and I had the opportunity to share a few of their items with you. As I say, about 200 other pages of them, but that gives us a little bit for today. In the brief While with Lyle. Back with you next week. I'd just like to share with you a few items from the first book I ever had published. It was a textbook for the English classes that I was teaching at Mount Union College at the time. This is some years ago. Should I tell you how many years ago? It was published by Macmillan, a good-sized publisher. But it was in 1971. I titled it Man Express, The Realm of Writing. And on page 139, I just want to share with you a little bit of this, talking about getting the right words. And I said on that page, our society is subjected to hundreds of instances of sloppy word usage. Impossibilities develop every day. In advertisements, in direct mail solicitations, in political arguments, and other ways. And I'm thinking that when I wrote this, on the sports page, there was this headline, Cleveland wallops Yankees 2-1. Wallops? W-A-L-L-O-P-S? They walloped them? The use of that term, well, it's colorful, I'll grant you, but it's hardly appropriate if you only won 2-1. Slovenly phrased advertisements cause much distress, I think, in any logical analysis of persuasion. Back in the book, now this goes back, of course, 25-some years ago, but there was a razor blade manufacturer that came up with this little gem, and it was repeated nightly on television. I remember it. That's why I put it in the book. Quote, "Nobody makes lather like Gillette." Got that? Nobody makes lather like Gillette. Is that brilliant? Really? Nobody makes it like Gillette. Well, not even Gillette. Evidently, isn't that what it says? If Gillette does make lather like Gillette, then the phrasing should be changed to nobody else makes lather like Gillette. See that? But they didn't say that. They just said nobody did. Well, unless it's all changed, I think all potential customers must sadly assume that there's no lather on the market at all, like Gillette. And thus, we should, if the Gillette lather is good, we should console ourselves with a lesser lather, perhaps brand X or A or B, but not Gillette. According to that, nobody makes it like it. But if you said nobody else, that would be a different matter. And so be it. A certain car manufacturer trumpeted one of its models in magazines and on the radio as the car for economy of operation. Now, it's not part of the ad, but some owners reported that the economy, about 11 miles to the gallon. I like this one. This is from a Florida radio station. It was commenting editorially on a rash of strikes in the area. And the station ingeniously put its position in this remarkable word sentence. It was, quote, "Disputes must be settled before they start." How can you settle something it isn't? But we do understand, of course. Yes, that's right. Well, so be it. Those are just some of the items that way back when, that was what? See, this is 99, 71 from 99, 28 years ago. Now, I was trying to put words together then, just as I continued for all my years of teaching English at Mount Union College, and I still enjoy using words even now. But when we come down to it, it's important, I guess, to say it or to write it in such a way that it holds up and makes the point that you want it to make. Back with you next week. Bobcat has been with me for a number of years, and one of the activities that cat came up with was a collection of his poems. A little booklet called Purdy Poems. Yes, it was published by the Hairball Press way back in 1988, but well, you can come up with some pretty good things that I'd just like to share with you some of these. This is called A Cat in a Coma. No, not a coma, a comma. A cat has claws at the end of its paws, and that ought to make sense. A comma is a pause at the end of a clause. And now you know the difference. Did you get that? The clause? Oh, well. Can't go into all of that, I suppose, but I like this little poem also that Bobcat came up with. Roses are red, violets are blue. A cat prefers mice to flowers. How true! That was a little bit of a confession, I think, on the cat's part. But it does show. Oh, incidentally, Bobcat listed in the booklet some of his favorite books. For example, well, maybe I don't know how many of them you might remember, but A Tale of Two Kitties, The Sound and the Purry, The Scarlet Litter Box, The Great Gatsby, The Kit and the Pendulum, and War and Purrs. Oh, well, you do know that these are all spin-offs of War and Peace, The Scarlet Letter. I hope you know. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Oh, well, those were the he had a little fun with that. How about this little poem that he wrote? It's called The Signal. You'll know you've seen a kitty catty when your heart goes pitty patty. Or how about this one? Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 9, but the mouse wasn't mine, and all I could do was gawk. But he really got clobbered. Well, poetry. Little things that we share with each other. You see, cats can write good poetry, so can dogs, and even sometimes old professors may come up with something. They might. That's not real sure about it, I guess that, but it's a possibility. Let's just take a look at a poem that I think it shows. This is a poem I wrote about point of view. Yes. This young polka dot robin that paused on a green rim of stone bath, deciding, head cocked and searching, did not know how much I hoped. For him it was a cleansing ritual considered, but my moment hung as I waited and watched his eyes as he debated. And then he plunged, and I reveled in his ordered ways. Beak under, then forward thrust and up and on to the rim, the preening layering back the folds, the feather engines whirring. What was this affirmation, you may ask? For him it was merely a needful task of body, made in routine measure, but for me it was insight, knowledge, and pleasure. Watching the bird, yes, taking a little bath. And I learned from it. Oh, we can learn all sorts of things when we find it. And so, with that in thought, I'll just conclude with a little poem called The Flights of Birds. Against the striations, clouds fronting the glow of dawn, they sweep in communal cadence, a frolic giving change into the morning tapestry. Is it merely exercise, a flexing to signal the day's foragings? Or early test of loyalty, the flock in constant harmony of wind and wing? Or is it a joyous celebration? Sun rises, the stretching lines give way, and so my heart in being part of this artistic scene, whatever it may mean. What am I doing there? Just observing the flight of birds, and they're up there, and we see them. We see them all over this town and many others. Birds flying, not just one bird, but maybe there's 8 or 10 of them, and they're kind of a little formation. This was early in the morning, making its mark in meaningful ways. I don't mean that the poem is the greatest thing that's ever been written, but the birds and their formation and their, well, let's face it, I think it'd be fun if I could fly. Back with you next week. First of all, you must understand that there are many ways of being thought strange. Having 5 arms might qualify, or walking barefoot in minus 20-degree temperatures, yes. Or how about not having cable TV? Well, first of all, today you must understand there are many ways of being thought strange. After all, walking barefoot in minus 20-degree temperatures might do it. Well, I'm sure that I have more than one claim to the category, but the most startling, apparently, is that which became evident, some time ago in a decent restaurant. At breakfast time, the clean, sleek waitress glides up to the table, smiles, and says, "Good morning!" And she hands me a menu and picks up the coffee cup, ready to slosh the morning brew into it. And I said, "No coffee, please." My words surprised her. "No coffee? Well, what will you drink?" "Well, the water is fine with my eggs and toast." And she takes the order, mumbles now, and stares uncontrollably at me. But no coffee? "No, thanks." I pick up a local newspaper I bought on the way to the restaurant, and I start reading the Ohio news. No problem. But then another waitress comes by. She sees the empty cup. She picks it up, ready to slosh. "No coffee, though, please." The moment should be captured on film because she stands there, the coffee pot raised, the cup held firm, and the mouth open. "No coffee?" "No, thanks." I return to the paper, and I read some more about that. And the eggs are brought now, and the toast, and the grape jelly. And I drink the water. And the waitress, watching over me, is not ready to capitulate. She said, "Now are you ready for your coffee, sir?" There's an expectant air about her, and the coffee pot is poised once again. "No, thanks." Back at the cashier's counter, a committee begins holding council, and I hear mumbling phrases. No coffee. What will he drink? What will we do? He turned me down." And I continue reading the paper, and then "No coffee now, please?" "No, thanks, I'm doing fine." But, sir, you have nothing to drink." "Oh, the water is fine." "But, sir, water isn't, it isn't coffee." "Well, I appreciate that acute vision of yours," I responded, but no, thank you. But, what to drink?" "Well, the water is excellent." And so she leaves, defeated. And I congratulate myself. No longer will I be disturbed by a waitress whose satisfaction obviously depends on how many cups of coffee she can serve a customer. But then a final try by another waitress, desperate for a return to normalcy. Would you like some coffee now, sir? Something to drink?" Something, of course, means only coffee. I smile. "No, thanks." But I wonder, what would have happened if I had told the waitress what I really would like to have had? What if I had told her of really my favorite beverage? Dr. Pepper, yes. But I don't ask for that very often. At least not for breakfast. But the coffee pourers seldom recover when I do. And I don't really enjoy watching all those waitresses suffer that way. No, never have started to drink coffee. Never will. Back again next week. Hello, and I'm aware of the fact that some books require a close reading, page to page. You've thought about that, perhaps? That's not the same as on radio, but still. Some books will not permit any idle, casual reading, and certainly no skipping around. Well, I remember some time ago a book was given to me that, it's not quite one of those. You see, close reading is not needed on the inside at all. You can skip around. You can try a line on page 19 or flip to page 123. Doesn't make any difference. That book is just a compilation of intriguing and sometimes hilarious sayings. How about this on page 15? "No matter how many hot dogs you consume at home, they always taste better at the ballpark." Or on page 168, I found this one. "Some people are like blisters. They never appear until the work is done." Oh, yes, on page 159, I found "Little white lies are for golfers." Woo! And how about this one? "To say nothing often reflects a fine command of the English language." Well, as you can discern, the book has no deep matter. The collection ranges far afield. Any page is simply a continuation of the listings. No editorial analysis, no tedious ponderings. But the intriguing aspect of all this is that you and I can identify with practically all of the adages, even if we never heard of them before. They do have a ring of authenticity. For example, I like this one. "Experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted." Or a bank gives you an umbrella and then demands it back as soon as it rains. Ooh. How about "Never put off until tomorrow what you can avoid altogether." I like that. "A common sense is the least common of all senses." Yeah, and finally, and I must say there's a little bit of truth in this one, to err is human. To really foul up things is to take a computer. Well, anyway, perhaps this sharing of adages will spur your own reading of the book. It's published by Doubleday, and the compiler is John Peers. It's new. It's very easy to read. The book is no problem at all. Oh, except the title. That's a tough thing. That's the problem. I'd share a few more sayings from it. It's very good, but for the title, I'm going to need more space. I'm going to need more time. You see, it's the one aspect of the book you cannot absorb quickly. I love it, though. I've never heard of this title of a book before. Here's the title of the book. Here it is. Are you ready? Quote, 1001 logical laws, accurate axioms, profound principles, trusty truisms, homey homilies, colorful corollaries, quotable quotes, and rambunctious ruminations for all walks of life, end quote. Well, after that, I'd say it's my conclusion. In order, I think what I would say is, quote, long titles make for short readings. Back with you next week. I'd like to talk today with you just briefly, not a gift in a box with ribbons, but, well, a gift anyway, the gift of a time of fun and of happy insight. You know, we read comic pages in anticipation of a bit of laughter, don't we? Some of the happenings on the page are ridiculous, but they can still prompt a little bit of a laugh, and the ridiculous occurs also with many wordplay jokes. Like the one about the fellow who is ready to leave the house, waiting for his wife to be ready. He's downstairs and he shouts to her, "It's time we should leave." She says, "I'm not dressed yet." He says, "Well, just slip on something and come on down." So she slipped on the top step and came right down. Ho, ho, ho. Well, of course, if that actually happened, laughter would not have been heard, no. But wordplay, just to read for fun, prompts a good chuckle, I think. Yeah. Robert Benchley one time has said that in order to laugh, it's necessary we know what we're laughing at and to know why we're laughing. Sometimes we may not be quite sure of the answers, but we'll still laugh. I like, well, let's see, what are we going to do about the gift of laughter? Well, we can go from the ridiculous to direct truth and still get some laughs. I like this one. One woman says, "I didn't accept Bob the first time he proposed." The other woman says, "Oh, no, dearie, I know you didn't. You weren't even there." Oh, I like this. What about the fellow who asked the waiter, "Do you serve crabs here?" And the waiter said, "Yeah, have a seat. We serve everybody." Oh, my. Laughter's a gift. I think it is, because it's not that we must have it. It's that what we must earn, what we must always strive for. Rather, it's just a delightful spin-off from what's always around us. Yeah, it's there. It's there. It's the frosting on the cake that we buy. The cake is still good, but the frosting makes it better. The best laughter is that which comes from happiness, of course. That's what counts. And there's no question about it. I'm remembering thinking way back at Mount Union, teaching my classes in English there for many, many years. I remember the one time I wrote an essay topic on the blackboard. And I told my students in this writing class, "You must do a good job. There must be no dangling participles, no misspelled words, no incomplete sentences. If you want your college degree, you must show your ability to write without a flaw." Yeah, it was then a student pointed out to me that I'd misspelled a word on the blackboard. Oops. Well, it wasn't a gift of laughter for me exactly at that moment, but the class. Oh, they certainly had a happy time with it. And, of course, I laugh at it, too, thinking about it. You see, laughter is a gift. And if it's a gift, then let's do the right thing. Let's share some good laughter with other people. Back with you next week. We all enjoy recalling childhood activities that I think meant much to us, and for some it may be a favorite swimming hole, maybe an adventure while hiking. But if fortunate, you may have memories of some wise elder who coached you, who taught you the things that count in life. In my case, one of the experiences that persists in my memory is the encounter with the books of Horatio Alger. He was a 19th century writer of more than 50 boys' books. And I would say that he was, I have to tell you this, he was considerably before my time, of course. I wasn't around in the 19th century, but but the legacy of his books came to me through a collection of my grandfather's. Horatio Alger. He made it quite clear, and I should make it quite clear, that he was no great stylist. But for boys in their early teens, he wrote of young folks. And I remember reading them. His books were always of the rags to riches theme. The farm boy goes to the big city to seek his fortune, a necessity inasmuch as the farm is heavily mortgaged and his widowed mother faces its loss. How's that? Or maybe worse, the book has a forced marriage to a mortgage holder, unless the wealth is... Well, anyway, Horatio Alger was a congregational minister who found satisfaction in helping the newsboys and the bootblacks on the streets of New York. And he enjoyed that. The characters are drawn from all of the boys he met. For example, in a book called Ben Bruce, there's a passage that has such a classic line as, "He fetched him a blow." Yes, when the one boy came across the villain, see? The villain was counting his money stored in a box buried by a tree. And as they watch a robber with a coarse, sensual look, doubtless the result of intemperate habits, that's what the book said, the robber whacks the man on the head and says, "I'll take your money, old man," and he prepares to walk off with the stolen money, leaving the old man senseless on the ground. But that's when the young boy comes along, Ben Bruce. He doesn't like that robber. He says in the book there's something repulsive about him. Well, I won't argue with that. And so Ben Bruce, quote, "seemed naturally to take command because he knew what he must do." Yeah. Well, what's Ben Bruce, this boy, going to do to save this man from having all his money stolen? Well, he sees the old man's shovel right there, and he plans to whack the robber with it. But you see, Horatio Alger, the book writer, he didn't refer to the shovel as a shovel. A bit of almost rhythm in this, as he said, Ben espied the spade. To espy, E-S-P-Y, to espy a spade. And then he quote, "fetched a blow" on the robber. I loved all of this. I loved the phrasing that Horatio Alger came up with. I'm grateful way back that I had a grandfather who kept Horatio Alger around. I think about 30 volumes of them, and I've read them, and I've reread a number of them, through the many, many years. Oh, yes, I should tell you that Ben Bruce, that book titled Ben Bruce, and the boy in it who espied the spade, well, he did go on to the big city. Yeah, that was another part. You learn a little bit about the big city, but all in very good ways because of Horatio Alger. I don't even know if his books are available in any of the libraries. I know they're not for sale. This was a long time ago that they were published. And they may not be the best written in the world, but, well, I can remember reading them in my younger years, and I enjoyed them. Hope you might enjoy a little bit of our program now and then, once in a while. Back with you next week. There are many fine poets in the United States, and I realize that what I'm about to do, well, it includes its reference to a fine poet, but some may question that. Shel Silverstein, not exactly one that you would find in a very dedicated American literature course at Mount Union College, for example, and yet the whole point is that it's poetry in some ways. There's a little bit of rhyme. Here's a little poem called, are you ready? It's about the babysitter. It's called The Sitter. "Mrs. McTwitter, the babysitter, I think she's a little bit crazy. She thinks a babysitter's supposed to sit upon the baby." Well, yeah, a babysitter, that's right. Sit down on the baby. Oh, my. And Shel Silverstein has a number of books that have been out with it. That's this kind of thing. For example, how about this one? Now, this does say something that is very, very, helpful, perhaps, how not to have to dry the dishes. How could that be? If you have to dry the dishes, such an awful boring chore, if you have to dry the dishes instead of going to the store, if you have to dry the dishes and you drop one on the floor, maybe they won't let you dry the dishes anymore. Yeah, that's yes. Well, of course, you can see it's. Oh my! Well, is that poetry? It rhymes, and of course, the whole fun of Shel Silverstein's poetry is that so many. Have you ever thought about this as a subject of a poem? How many? Yes. How many? How much? That's the title of it. How many, how much, what? Well, let's listen. Another short little poem. How many slams in an old screen door? Depends how loud you shut it. How many slices in a bread? Depends how thin you cut it. How much good inside a day? Depends how good you live 'em. How much love inside a friend? Depends how much you give 'em. In other words, to express yourself in this kind of, it's a little bit ridiculous, you might say. Of course it is. How about this one? Well, you take almost any poem. The particular book that I'm reading of Shel Silverstein's is titled A Light in the Attic. But it can be all sorts of what appears to be kind of ridiculous poetry in one hand, and yet fun. Don't have to go. Because so many things are ridiculous. Here's one about the bear in there, B-E-A-R. There's a polar bear in our Frigidaire. See, that rhymes. That's the way it starts off. There's a polar bear in our Frigidaire. He likes it 'cause it's cold in there. With his seat in the meat and his face in the fish and his big hairy paws in a buttery dish. He's nibbling the noodles. He's munching the rice. He's slurping the soda. He's licking the ice. And he lets out a roar if you open the door. And it gives me a scare to know he's in there, that polary bear in our Frigidaire. Yes. I think that there's a place for this kind of ridiculousness, and it may not always be ridiculous. There may be some very significant considerations to them all. I'll just conclude here our little time together with two more very short ones here, but see what you might have to say about this. This is called Batty. The baby bat screamed out in fright, "Turn on the dark! I'm afraid of the light." Turn on the dark. Ridiculous, yes. But again, it's interesting. And, here's one about arrows. I shot an arrow toward the sky. It hit a white cloud floating by. The cloud fell, dying to the shore. So I don't shoot arrows anymore. Uh-huh. You're going to shoot the arrow, goes up into a cloud and rips the cloud, then the cloud falls down. You're going to do that anymore. Shel Silverstein, poetry from his book, A Light in the Attic. And as I said at the beginning, this is not the kind of poetry you'll find in an American literature textbook, perhaps. But I think it does have its place. And, I trust that might be the case. Ooh. Place in case. See, that rhymes. See, it affects everybody. Bye. Be with you next week. Hello. Have you ever wondered about something? Of course you have. But there's something you don't understand and you wondered about it, something that makes you feel perhaps a bit unsure? Well, I'm intrigued with a sign that I saw some time ago. I think it was, way back in December, a sign in front of a rural nursery facility. I know that, Christmas trees are for sale, and they can be readily seen from the highway, a fine display of them in front of the building. And I know that poinsettias are fine flowers for holidays, but, They were not on display outdoors there, but you had to go inside to see them. I'm sure they were excellent flowers. I did figure out the meaning of the sign, but the sign continues to intrigue me nonetheless. Yes, we can be intrigued by words, can't we? The sign said, Christmas trees, inside, poinsettias. Well, now wait a minute. The Christmas trees, that was one line. Inside, the next line, and then poinsettias was the next line. Does that mean the Christmas trees are they really that teeny-weeny that they're inside poinsettias? Of course not. It was just saying that the Christmas trees were inside or that the poinsettias were inside, one or the other, but not the one inside the other. But it was intriguing to ponder, and as I thought about this fine facility and others of the same type, I found myself pondering that term nursery. Just as well thinking about nursery, too. Now, nursery is defined by Webster as both a, quote, a place where parents may leave children with trained attendants, end quote, and also, quote, a room in a home set apart for children, quote, and also, quote, a place where young trees are raised for transplanting or for sale, end quote. So you see, young trees and young kids have something in common. I'm intrigued by that. Not going to do anything with it. I'm kind of fascinated with it. There it is. And on to another intrigue. Do the names we assign to babies carry any significance regarding the success of the children as they grow up? Well, I thought names might be a factor, and I thought that, well, until I studied the life of Walt Whitman. Now, you remember that name from school, Walt Whitman? A poet of the last century, highly regarded, featured in all literature books, of course. Walt. Yeah, that's a nice name. Same name as his father's, but you see, he had 3 brothers. And their names, well, they were much more intriguing, you see. Not Walt Whitman, but Thomas Jefferson Whitman. That was one of them. And the others, there was an Andrew Jackson Whitman and a George Washington Whitman. Yeah, those were the names of Walt Whitman's 3 brothers. But none of the brothers made any headlines in their day, just their older brother, whose name was Walt. He wrote some poems, Walt Whitman. I'm intrigued by that. And since Walt Whitman achieved his fame by using words, well, let's take a look at an intriguing brain teaser involving words. You see, a bookkeeper noticed there were consecutive double letters in the word balloon, L-L-O-O, and she found other examples, such as woolly, W-O-O-L-L-Y, and the word spittoon with S-P-I-T-T-O-O-N. Well, that would be pretty good. And then she tried to think of a word with 3 consecutive pairs of double letters, but couldn't recall. Could you come up with a word? Could you come up with a word that would have that possibility of consecutive pairs, not just of double letters, but of triple letters? Something like that. Be intriguing. You know, if you can't do that, you can't find that word, it might be embarrassing. Try that one. 2 sets of 3 sets, 3 words, 3 letters, twice. Well, enough of that. I'm stumbling a bit. Back with you next week. You like humor? Do you like something that has some good laughs to it and so on? I think that it's can be very, very good to have a good laugh now and then, just with, well, in fact, I've got a book titled Keep 'em Laughin'. Yeah, Keep 'em Laughin'. And it's put together by 4 professional speakers, humorists, Doc Blakely, Joe Griffith, Bob Henry, and Jeannie Robertson. And I just want to share a few of them with you. I think, well, for example, I love this bumper snicker. You might say, not a bumper sticker. What is it? Quote, "If you don't like my driving, stay off the sidewalk." I think that's very good. Well, and then about driving, we have another one here that I'd like to share with you. And as long as we don't take it personally or too seriously. One fellow says to his to a friend, another fellow, First one says, my wife drives like lightning. And his friend said, oh, you mean she's a fast driver? He says, no, she hits trees. Oh, my. Yes, you see, and then, of course, there's the one about the little boy on driving. The little boy said, Daddy, I wish you'd let Mommy drive. It's more exciting. Yes, I see we're kind of anti with all of these. Now, these are not mine. These are ones that these gentlemen put together here of different kinds. On a slightly different basis, but still under this general topic of driving. This one perhaps makes a bit more sense. Drive like hell, and you'll get there. Yeah, that works it out, I think, very effectively. Well, anyway, the story is told of jokes, lots of good jokes. And as one of them here said, the trouble with a lot of Sunday drivers is that they don't drive any better during the week. It goes either way. And then this one, just to wrap up a little bit of time here about driving. The little book, is as I indicated to you, is called Keep 'em Laughing. And the whole purpose of these things is to have the people laugh. Sometimes there may be something that the person really doesn't want to laugh at. Yeah, if your teenager wants to learn to drive, don't stand in his way. Yeah, don't stand in his way. That's a totally different meaning than perhaps what is ordinarily implied. Yep. Well, and then finally this one, I suppose we'd have to say this. Well, I'll give you two more here, yes. One says, I can't understand why motorists wear safety belts. It's the pedestrians who aren't safe. And finally, the mother of a teenager said, my 16-year-old just got his license and can drive as well as his father or I. And he can do it on either side of the road. Wow, isn't that wonderful? He's mastered the whole business, even though I haven't mastered the humor for today's program. But I did want to share a few of those with you, and I trust that if that takes care of it, we'll be back with you next week. Well, I'm sure many of you remember that name, Dizzy Dean. Oh, all the baseball fans would know Dizzy Dean. Long time, very, very wonderful professional baseball player. Dizzy had a way of coming up with comments, I think, that helped to define his distinctive character. Well, now just for example here, he was being interviewed one time by a reporter, and Dizzy Dean was not using real good phrasing, and the reporter was a little concerned about this, and so finally, this is supposed to be true now. I've got this out of a book. The reporter, quite concerned about it, said, Mr. Dean, don't you know the King's English? Dizzy thought for a moment, and he said, well, sure I do. And so is the Queen. Don't you know the King's English? Well, anyway, it's from a book called The Speaker's Treasury of Sports, Anecdotes, Stories, and Humor. Gerald Tomlinson is the editor of that, the collector of that in the books, and all sorts of things here that come ahead. There's one time Dwight D. Eisenhower, yes, I think that name ought to register with most of us too. He loved to play golf. Yeah, he loved to play golf, and he did a good job with it. Not a real good job. After Eisenhower left the White House, a reporter sometime later asked Eisenhower if retirement from politics had affected his golf game. Ike Eisenhower replied, oh, yes, a lot more people beat me now. Apparently they allowed him to win when he was the president, yes. Well, little football story here. A fellow was watching professional football on television, see, and he finally went to bed, and he failed to hear the alarm go off at 6:30. Well, that was it, but his wife shook him 20 minutes later. She said, honey, it's 10 to 7. The fellow stood up and said, "Whose favor?"